Hi everyone, this is Dr. Nitin Chhoda with Ignition Time and welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for being a viewer and a subscriber, folks. I'm going to give you some new information that you probably didn't even realize, that you probably didn't even know about, as far as the key differences between the Republican plan and the Democratic plan are concerned. And I'm going to highlight some important segments from an important interview with the new Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and what he said today. And the one person that could potentially be standing in the way, not as far as stimulus is concerned, but definitely as far as a key provision, the $15 an hour minimum wage, which is a priority for the Democrats, is concerned. You'll notice that when the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer answers that question, he essentially avoids the question. It's super interesting. Make sure you watch this video all the way through to the end so you get all the details. Let's get started. On your screen, you'll see a tweet from Heather Long from the Washington Post. She's quoting an article from CNN which points out that as per the Biden plan, 95% of households would get a stimulus check. That's 160 million households. And with the Republican plan, 78% of households would get a check. In other words, that's 131 million households. And most families earning $77,100 to $110,700 under the Republican plan would not get a stimulus check. In fact, you'll see this headline on your screen. This is the CNN article. An estimated 29 million people would lose out on stimulus payments under the Republican proposal. Also, folks, here's a really good article on your screen from the Washington Post, and the headline reads, where Republicans' $618 billion stimulus relief plan, which they discussed with President Biden for 2 whole hours yesterday at the White House. And by the way, President Biden did say that their offer was too small, but how it really differs from the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. Folks, let's show you this chart on your screen, which shows you the scale of the stimulus relief proposals, the $1.9 trillion plan. And as we scroll down, you'll see how it compares with the $618 billion plan. You'll see the entire plan from the Democrats is in blue, and you see that direct payments, the stimulus checks, correspond to $465 billion, which is $1,400 stimulus checks that would go out to well over 160 million people. Now, as we scroll down, you'll start to see that the Republican plan, which is going to provide stimulus checks to 29 million fewer individuals, is not only going to go out to less individuals, but it's also proposed to be smaller. It's going to be $1,000, not the $1,400. And that total amount is going to correspond to $220 billion. You'll see that portion in red, out of the entire $618 billion. And so, folks, now let's look at the bigger picture here. In fact, you'll take a look at this chart on your screen, which shows you the differing priorities in the stimulus relief proposals. Let's focus on the direct payments for just a second. Again, the Biden plan is $465 billion, and the Republican plan is $220 billion. So you can see right here the battle between the $1,400 stimulus check in the Democratic plan and the $1,000 stimulus check in the Republican plan, essentially corresponding to $220 billion out of the $618 billion. So, folks, here's the bottom line. Let me show you a table on your screen so you can help understand it. So on one side, I'll show you the Republican proposal. On the other side, I'll show you what the Democrats want to do. The Republicans want $1,000 stimulus checks. The Democrats want $1,400 stimulus checks. The Democrats want the same or similar thresholds as the CARES Act, which was $75,000 filing for a single file, $150,000 jointly, and the Republicans want lower thresholds. Now, specifically, the thresholds that the Republicans are proposing is $40,000 for a single filer or $80,000 per couple. In other words, if you start making between 40 and 50, it gets phased out. After 50,000, it's phased out completely. And if a couple filing jointly makes between $80,000 to $100,000, it gets phased out. Above $100,000, essentially gone completely. No $1,000 stimulus checks. The Democrats, on the other hand, want to keep it the same: $75,000 single, $150,000 filing jointly, and then it gets phased out after that. Another key difference is, for the total cost of the plan, as far as the Republicans are concerned, is $618 billion, and the Democrats, the total cost of the plan is $1.9 trillion, the American Rescue Plan proposed by President Biden. And out of that, the stimulus check component is $220 billion in the Republican proposal and $465 billion, like I showed you earlier, in the Democratic proposal. And it's very clear that the new Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer wants the bigger plan. Let's take a look at one segment from Chuck Schumer's press conference today, where he says the $618 billion plan is too small. The president basically told the Republicans that we have to avoid the mistakes of 2009, and he did say the president is open to ideas. Let's roll the tape and hear what he had to say.
The need for a big, bold package. He said that he told Senate Republicans that the $600 billion that they proposed was way too small. I think it is his belief, it is Secretary Yellen's belief, it is our belief. If we did a package that small, we'd be mired in the COVID crisis for years. And we are not going to make the mistake of 2009 and have too small a package that took too long, and it took 4 or 5 years for the economy to recover. President Biden said he told Republicans he's willing to make some modifications, but he's very strong that the full American Rescue Plan get us through this crisis. Secretary Yellen said the Republican $600 billion wasn't close to enough, and specifically noted that it didn't do enough to help low-income families because it excluded the EITC and the CTC. She also said we can't repeat the same mistakes of 2009. The whole country, maybe except some in the Republican caucus, seem to understand that. And by the way, it was pointed out at our lunch that there is overwhelming support for the ARP. Democrats, Republicans, Independents, all by a majority, support a bold plan and support going through reconciliation if we have to. So this is a bipartisan plan if you go talk to Democrats, Independents, and Republicans out in the country, for sure. The Senate new majority is now ready to get to work. We're unified behind the goal of delivering desperately needed emergency relief to the American people. We'll begin the process this afternoon with a vote on the motion to proceed. I'm confident that will pass. And then we roll up our sleeves and get to work, taking the large numbers that are in the budget plan and crafting them. We share President Biden's desire to advance this legislation in a bipartisan way, but the work must move forward. We are not going to dilute, dither, or delay, because the needs of the American people are just too great. Time is of the essence to address this crisis. We are focused on the substance. That's getting emergency relief to people as we promised we would do as soon as possible. That was a universal campaign of Democrats in Georgia, the Biden presidency, and across the country. And I've been saying from the beginning, some of you didn't believe me, that the Senate must deal with 3 things simultaneously. Nominations, we're confirming 2 more nominees today, a fair impeachment trial, the House today filed their brief, and delivering emergency COVID relief. That process starts later today. Democrats, Senate Democrats are executing on all 3 of these priorities.
And folks, the next segment is especially important because the one person getting in the way of the Senate Majority Leader is the conservative Democrat, Joe Manchin from West Virginia. Although he said he's supporting the budget resolution for large stimulus, he's not in favor of the $15 an hour minimum wage, which would mean that some amendments will need to happen to the entire $1.9 trillion plan. You'll notice that when the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is asked about this, he essentially doesn't really answer the question because he knows Joe Manchin, the Democratic senator from West Virginia, may be his nemesis. Let's take a look at what he says. He says, we have strong support for the plan, and he does comment on Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia. Let's watch.
We were told it was set back when Leader McConnell made an extraneous demand, trying to tell our caucus how to run things when we're in the majority, but we're making progress and we're getting close.
Are you confident that every element of the president's plan, including the aspect with the minimum wage, survives reconciliation?
Look, there's going to be a process, as we said. We believe we have very strong support for a bold, strong plan on the level of what the president proposed. All the details are going to be worked out as we go through the committee process, and we hope Republicans will join us, but we are not going to dilute this so it doesn't help the American people get out of this crisis quickly.
Leader Schumer, Senator Manchin said earlier today he would support moving forward with reconciliation, but as part of a more targeted process. Do you think that you'll have to pare down this package at all?
Well, look, we're going to have amendments, but the belief of the entire caucus, I believe, is we need a big, bold, strong package.
That's it, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of these important updates about the key differences between the two plans. I showed you the differences visually. We showed you a chart. I've also highlighted what the position is of Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia and what the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer thinks of this entire situation. Let me know what you think below. If you learned something new, please do me a favor. Please click like, please subscribe, please enable notifications. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm. I would greatly appreciate that. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.